Where are you? Are you all right?
Francine Shimizu keeps a grief journal. In it, she writes directly to her daughter Heather, a young Indigenous woman whose death her family says was preventable. Shimizu reads a passage.
Have you forgotten about me? I miss you so much, Heather, it hurts.
When Heather Winterstein showed up at St. Catharines General Hospital in December for a severe backache, her mother says she was sent home on a city bus with Tylenol.
She felt that she was dismissed. She said that to her dad, that they didn't do anything.
The next day, her father called for an ambulance. Heather was dropped off at the emergency department, where she was triaged, put in a wheelchair, and allegedly left in the waiting room unattended, according to witnesses who spoke to Shimizu.
She ended up losing consciousness, and she fell out of her wheelchair onto the floor, and she never regained consciousness.
Shimizu says she was called to the hospital 5 hours after Heather passed out. She watched her daughter die in the ICU.
They were doing CPR, and all I could do was just hold her hand.
Heather's family believes her pain was ignored because of her Indigenous heritage and drug use. Shimizu, who was a registered nurse, was told by the local public health unit Heather had a strep A infection.
The institution has to invest a lot of time and effort to be able to weed out this kind of racism.
The hospital network says findings from its internal review into Heather's patient experience will not be made public, but added it is looking at how our emergency department functions and the ways we identify and support members of equity-deserving groups. The Six Nations of the Grand River, where Shimizu is from, is supporting calls for a coroner's inquest, saying the case highlights why many Indigenous people harbor mistrust towards the healthcare system.
This is a regular occurrence. You talk to any Indigenous person, they'll either have experienced it within their own family or they know of people who have experienced it. I think there's a lot to learn why a young woman is basically ignored in an emergency department and then finally dies.
Shimizu feels Niagara Health is taking responsibility, but says reform is needed to ensure marginalized communities and those struggling with addiction can access care without judgment.
Are you happy?
While Shimizu waits for change, she processes her loss on paper.
I cry for you every day. I wish this never happened.
Niagara Health says there is now a dedicated social worker in the emergency department. They are also piloting a technician role who will observe and reassess patients in the waiting room and support those who arrive by ambulance. Niagara Health says these actions were taken based on its internal review. In St. Catharines, Caryn Ceolin, City News.